I took the cursed night shift at a haunting Portland cemetery. Discover the sinister rules exposed. The moment Lisa stepped into Greywood Cemetery, the air thickened around her. Shivers crawled down her spine, and a bone-deep chill seeped into her bones. Moist fog swirled through the crooked tombstones, each one a silent guardian of long-buried secrets. This was no ordinary job, this was a graveyard. Her heart raced at the thought as she tightened her grip on the flashlight, its beam slicing through the darkness. Was it foolish to take this position? Was she desperate enough to ignore the whispers about this place? The first hour passed enigmatically. It didn't feel much different than her previous jobs, a simple walk through the shadows. Yet, as night blanketed the earth, a soft rustling almost like hushed voices tickled her ears. Leaves danced violently around her, twisting with the wind. Goosebumps erupted on her arms. She decided it was just her imagination, fatigue playing tricks on her overworked mind. Then she noticed the odd behavior of her coworkers. They spoke in whispers about the unsanctified graves, warnings etched into their brows. "Don't disturb them," one murmured, his eyes darting nervously. It seemed ludicrous at first. But as shadows the size of men flitted beyond her peripheral vision, laughter bubbled up inside, betraying her fear. Surely, this was a joke, right? But doubt seeped into her thoughts, whispering loud enough for her to hear. Unnerved by their caution, she forged onward through the cemetery's dim paths. But as the church bells tolled midnight, panic scratched at her mind. Max and Emma were with their friends tonight, but were they safe? What if these tales weren't just legends? Each step felt heavier, burdened by her growing sense of dread, the air thick with sorrow. Were there really dark things lingering in this haunted expanse, things that linked her to the very ghosts her co-workers feared? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she turned a corner, her breath halted. In the distance, the wrought iron gates creaked, a grotesque invitation from the shadow beyond. Suddenly her phone buzzed, vibrating like a trapped insect against the silence. It was a text from Emma saying they'd be home late. Lisa's heart sank as in the shadows, something flickered. She squinted and her stomach lurched. It couldn't be. There was a figure, dark and looming, watching her. A figure she could only describe as belonging to the tales, faceless, eyes glinting like dark lanterns in the haze. Panic washed over her, and she sprinted toward the gates, barely breathing. The neighborhood was treating her differently now, their glances filled with an unspoken warning. Max and Emma burst in a few minutes later, wide-eyed and frozen. They stumbled through the door, fear palpitating in their voices. "Mom, we saw it too. The shadow. It was watching us." They didn't know how right they were or how dangerously close to those secrets they now stood. Before she could soothe their fears, the world around her began to slip away, their home becoming entwined with Greywood Cemetery's dark labyrinthine past. How could she protect them from a malevolent spirit lurking just out of sight? Terror consumed her as her heart raced, a race against time and the sinister whispers that tangled around her every thought. She was in too deep, and the shadows were calling for her. The darkness of the room pressed down on Lisa like a heavy blanket. Max and Emma stood frozen in the doorway, their faces pale, reflecting the fear that now consumed their home. Shadows shifted ominously in the corners as if they were alive, pulsating with dark intent. Lisa felt the weight of their stares, igniting a desperate need to protect them. "Did you really see it?" she breathed, her voice trembling, clutching the cold doorknob as if it could anchor her to reality. "Yes, Mom," Emma whispered, eyes wide. "It was right outside. I don't know what it was, but it felt wrong." Lisa's heart drummed against her ribs. The tales of faceless ghosts and unsanctified graves pulsed violently in her mind. What had she brought home? Max's voice, shaky, broke through her racing thoughts. It looked at us like it knew us. No, no. We're okay now. We're safe here. But the words felt hollow in the oppressive atmosphere. She turned to the window, futilely hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything to dispel the dread creeping through her veins. Outside, the gloomy night loomed heavier than ever. I need to check the locks, she said, trying to sound calm, but her hands shook. Max followed her, peering cautiously over her shoulder. Every time she turned a lock, they both flinched, expecting a sudden blow or an icy breath on their napes. As she secured the last latch, a creeping noise echoed through the stillness, a gentle scratching, like fingernails on wood, coming from outside. The sound was faint at first, but it grew sharper, clawing at her resolve. Did you hear that? Emma's voice quivered as she pressed closer to her brother. Of course not, Lisa said, but the dread gnawed at her. It's just the wind. Just the wind. Yet, even the wind felt like a lie, forcing the hairs on the back of her neck to stand up. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Darkness threatened to swallow the room whole. What is happening? Max whimpered, grasping Emma's hand tightly. I'll check the breaker, Lisa said, determined to show strength even as her insides twisted. She made her way to the basement door. Each creak of the floorboard seemed to scream against her, warning her against descending into the dark. Was it wise to go down there alone? Mom? Emma called softly, her voice simple yet filled with an unspeakable fear. I'll be right back. Stay close. Lisa steeled herself, her heart thrumming in her ears. The basement was a realm of shadows, where her flashlight beam barely penetrated the thick black. When she reached the bottom, she fumbled for the switch. She never felt so exposed. A chill crept down her spine, a tightening in her chest. As the lights flickered on, the room revealed its secrets: cobwebs, boxes stacked high, and the unmistakable presence of something lurking just beyond the beam. Then, from the corner of her eye, she glimpsed it. A dark silhouette, moving, slinking across the far wall. And it wasn't T alone. Another followed. Panic surged, and she bolted up the stairs, the flashlight nearly slipping from her grasp. Mom! What is it? Max's voice echoed like a desperate plea, propelling her forward. She couldn't breathe. Her mind raced, spinning out threads of terror. If the shadows were lurking here, what drove them? Were they tied to her? Or the cemetery? The grips of uncertainty tightened, and just as she reached the door, a chilling whisper slithered through the chilled air, sending ice shooting down her spine. Come back, Lisa stumbled. The trio, a fragile barricade against impending doom, turned anxious faces toward her. She drew in a shaky breath, trying to appear unfazed. But somewhere deep, she felt a gnawing truth: the shadows were not done with her. Suddenly, the lights went out. Darkness enveloped them. Heartbeats synchronized in fear as a low rumble echoed, growing into a menacing growl that mirrored the horror lurking just beyond their fragile safety. And somewhere in that suffocating blackness, Lisa understood one horrifying thing: she had invited the shadows into their lives. How could she ever find a way to push them back where they belonged? Whatever happens, don't let go of each other. She yelled into the darkness, fear slicing through her. But as the growl intensified, a chilling thought slithered into her mind: what if the shadows wanted more than just to watch? The shadows loomed ever closer, and the night was far from over. The oppressive darkness thickened, wrapping around them like a suffocating cloak. Lisa gripped Max and Emma tighter, a desperate shield against whatever terror lurked just beyond reach. The growl rumbled again, reverberating through the walls like the growl of a predator stalking its next meal. Was it the house settling under the weight of their fear, or something more sinister? Mom! What is happening? Max cried, voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. I don't know. Just hold on. The reassurance felt shaky, a threadbare protective barrier against the encroaching shadows. Then came a sudden crash from the kitchen, resonating like thunder in the stillness. Lisa's heart jolted, sending adrenaline racing through her veins. "Stay here," she ordered, even as the instinct to run surged through her. She turned, heart pounding, and flicked on the flashlight that seemed to beam directly into an unfathomable black. The narrow beam danced across the walls, revealing a faint outline of family photos, faces frozen in time. The moments captured within those frames felt eerily alive, as if the figures inside were writhing in silent agony, begging for release. They saw no warmth in their smiles. The images seemed marred by the creeping darkness seeping into the edges of each shot. "Mom?" Emma's quivering voice pulled her back. "Let us move to the living room." Lisa steeled herself and started forward, the beam of the flashlight pulling them onward like a lifeline in the suffocating dark. As they stepped cautiously across the threshold, a chill swept through the air, grazing their skin like the fingers of the dying. Whispers snaked around them, unintelligible murmurs that sent shivers cascading down Lisa's spine. The noises were disorienting, fluttering through the space like frantic moths. "Did you hear that?" Max's voice quivered, but just as he spoke, they heard it, a soft scuttling, as if something was moving just outside their vision. "Stay together," Lisa rasped, pushing down her own fear. The shadows felt so alive, and the tick-tick-tick grew louder, too close for comfort. She could feel their coldness wrapping around her, could almost hear their breaths brushing against her skin. Suddenly, the power flickered back. The room ignited in harsh fluorescent light, revealing their surroundings. The sofa tossed, cushions flung like discarded shells. A chair lay overturned, and something the air felt wrong, as if it had thickened. One look at her children told her that the terror was imprinted on their faces, too. Then the light sputtered again. This time, when they went out, it felt as though the air had transformed into a living entity, wrapping tightly around her throat. Panic surged, clawing at her sanity. Emma screamed, the shattering of her innocence cutting Lisa deeper than any shadow. In that moment of apparent safety, Lisa glanced around the room, noticing several of the family's picture frames had cracked or broken. Ghostly shapes emerged from the shadows, twisting like smoke in the corners. The likenesses from the pictures now seemed to watch her with haunted eyes, mouths opening, silently screaming. "Get down!" she shouted, throwing herself on the floor and pulling Max and Emma close. The growling crescendoed, clawing through the darkness like a beast awakening. The shadows stretched and morphed, towering over them, as if preparing to pounce. A loud thud echoed, resonating as if the weight of the world was crashing down, shaking the very foundation beneath them. A face materialized within the gloom, half-formed, eyes wide and hollow, lips curled into a mocking smile that turned Lisa's blood to ice. "Help us," it whispered, a fragmented voice against an ancient void, echoing through her bones. She squeezed her children tighter, fear consuming her thoughts. "What does it want?" she murmured, gripping their hands like lifelines. Just then, the front door creaked open on its own, a yawning black void framing the threshold. The wind howled through the house, and a cold gust rushed in, swirling around them. "Stay close," she yelled, backing towards the wall, heart racing. As they huddled together, the shadows began to convulse, as if summoned by the open portal. They reached toward the door and then stopped. In that instant, Lisa realized with horrifying clarity that the shadows had a purpose, and if the door was open. "Someone is coming," she breathed, dread forming frozen knots in her stomach. Before she could react, the growl transformed into a roar, the shadows recoiling and then surging forward, ready to claim their prize. What waited beyond that doorway? "Mom! What do we do?" The question lingered heavy in the air as everything began to spiral. The night had only just begun. The door creaked wider, revealing a fathomless abyss that pulsed with an eerie light, illuminating the edges of the swirling shadows. Lisa felt the darkness at her back like a predator, hungry and relentless. The growl escalated into an inhuman wail, echoing off the walls and resonating through their bones. Mom! What's happening? Max whispered again, eyes wide and filled with fear. Lisa couldn't take her eyes off the door. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, yet something held her there. The shadows buckled, shifting as if alive, blotting out every source of light. Another loud crash followed, the sound of something breaking deep in the house, and then a guttural snarl erupted from the doorway. Stay down. Lisa pulled Emma closer, shielded her daughter with her body while gripping Max tighter. The flashlight sputtered, flickered, and went dead, drowning them in blackness. The air thickened again. The shadows wrapped around Lisa, cold tendrils creeping through her clothes, brushing against her skin like icy fingers. Her panic surged. It felt as if the very darkness were alive and hungry. Then, a voice broke through the din. A voice she recognized. Help me. The whisper drifted from the threshold. No. It's a trap. Lisa shouted, her instincts warring with the haunting plea. The voice sounded like her sister, lost within the chaos of memory. It twisted in her heart, her feet frozen to the floor, battling against the urge to listen. Mom! We have to leave. Emma whimpered, glancing back toward the kith at the back of the room. The darkness stretched long, almost reaching for them. No. We can't go near that door. Disbelief dripped from every syllable. She was trying to convince herself as much as her children. Each second felt limitless, the shadows hungering for a way in. Another crash echoed through the house, the sound of an object slamming to the floor. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of terrible pleas blending into one continuous wailing. They tugged at her mind, fanning the flames of her terror. Mom! It's not her. It's not Aunt Sarah. Max cried, his fear palpable. The growl strengthened, becoming a battle cry against the whimpers. Lisa's heart pounded violently against her ribcage as the door suddenly jerked, as if something were pushing to escape. Don't, her voice nearly broke. She wasn't sure if she was talking to her children or pleading with herself. Sweat dripped down her back, and the shadows clawed closer. No way out, nowhere to hide. And then she remembered the stories. The prior owners used to hold midnight rituals in this very room. They whispered utterances of power that summoned shadows from realms beyond, binding them to the house. Listen! She shouted suddenly, her survival instinct igniting a fire within. The whispers entwined in a chilling manner, each voice becoming a mildly soothing yet desperate murmur. It was almost hypnotic but filled with malice, shadows inviting them into oblivion. We have to fight it. Mom! Emma clung to her. What do we do? Close your eyes, Lisa said, breathing deeply, forcing calm into the storm of fear. Think of the light. Imagine it surrounding us. But as Lisa spoke those words, the shadows erupted, surging toward them like a tidal wave, hungry and desperate to engulf them whole. The wailing reached a fever pitch, drowning out even her own thoughts. Something was pushing in, and they were trapped. The air shifted again, and right behind them, something began to take form, a shape. A figure lunging from the dark, half-formed and angry. Run! Lisa screamed, a primal urge taking hold. But where to go? The house throbbed with energy, the walls bending, twisting, as the phantoms of the past reached for them all. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears, her children's cries echoed, but there was nowhere to escape. The shadows were closing in, and that dark door was yawning wide, promising secrets that could consume them. What had they stumbled into? As she grasped her children tightly, something flickered in the shadows. They weren't just there to haunt. They wanted something. Mom, are they going to take us? Emma begged, voice teetering on the edge of hope and despair. Lisa's mind raced. Just before the darkness swallowed her whole, she understood one final choice awaited them. What were they willing to sacrifice to escape? The figures twisted, their mouths forming silent screams and twisted laughter. This wasn't just a night of fear, it was a price to be paid, a choice that would lead them to the eye of the storm. The ground beneath them trembled, and she braced herself for impact as the darkness surged forward, an overwhelmingly hungry beast ready to devour them whole. And in that terrifying moment, as the shadows lunged, a thought crashed into her mind with brutal force: would they fight, or would they become one with the shadows? The shadows lunged, and Lisa felt the cold claws of darkness scraping against her skin. In that instant, the house shuddered, walls twisting, like a living creature writhing in anguish. She could taste the fear in the air, thick and rancid, each breath a struggle against suffocation. The figure in the darkness took form, its features obscured by swirling mist, eyes glowing with an insatiable hunger. "Get back!" she shouted, instinctively pushing her children behind her. They huddled close, their small bodies trembling. She could feel their heartbeat matching her own frantic pulse, a symphony of fear that enveloped them like an oppressive blanket. The growl morphed into a deep, guttural laugh, reverberating through the floorboards, a cruel reminder of what lurked beyond the light. "Give us what we desire," the voice whispered, laced with spine-chilling malice. It was more than a threat, it was a promise. "Mom, what do they want?" Max's voice trembled, sharpened by terror. "I don't know," she replied, panic threading through her words. What could they possibly give? They had nothing but fear to offer. A sudden flicker of defiance rose within her. In that moment, she refused to cower. "Stay close," she ordered. With one final glance at the pulsating door, she turned and ran, forcing her children to follow. The darkness clawed at their heels, trying to pull them back into its cold embrace. But Lisa pushed forward, heart hammering in her chest, her mind racing with desperate thoughts. Where were they going? The hallways twisted, the house a labyrinth ensnaring them in its wretched grip. Every door they passed loomed with sinister potential, but she didn't have time to consider the alternatives. Shadows danced at the periphery of her vision, their movements eager and anticipatory. Another crash erupted from behind. She didn't dare look back. Emma clung to her side, both children's breaths came in sharp gasps, fear wrapped around them tightly. "Please, let this end," Lisa thought, but even in her darkest moments, an ember of resolve burned within her. "Mom!" Emma choked out. "Where do we go?" Lisa's mind spun, trapped in a dance between dread and determination. The front door was their only salvation, but it felt a lifetime away. "We need to find the basement," she blurted, though the words felt hollow. From her memory of the stories, the basement was supposed to hold darkness, yet perhaps it could also hide the weakness, the flaw they could exploit. "Quick!" she urged, guiding them down another corridor. As they approached the heavy door at the end, the growling intensified, a primal sound erupting in frustrated rage. The shadows pressed closer, swirling with furious energy, as if the house itself were angry at them for trying to escape. The door resisted as she rattled the handle, the wood creaking ominously. "Come on. Help me." She urged her children to push while she pulled, adrenaline burning bright in her veins. Finally, with a loud groan, the door flung open, revealing a dark staircase spiraling downward. "Down!" Lisa commanded, shoving Max in first, followed by Emma. She took a deep breath and plunged in after them, pulling the door shut at their heels. The echoes of the shadows were muffled, but they could still hear the faint wails and cries from above. The air grew colder as they descended. Each step felt heavier, the darkness down here more palpable, almost solid. It pressed against them like an eager crowd waiting for a spectacle. No light, no sound, just the echoes of their descent. "What if they follow us?" Max's voice quivered. "They won't," Lisa lied, forcing a brave face. But deep down, dread flickered. How were they going to escape if the darkness caught up? At the bottom, they reached a small, damp room. Lisa surveyed their surroundings, heart hammering. No windows, just a single flickering bulb overhead. Old crates littered the floor, and she noticed strange symbols etched into the walls, a web of whispers binding something beneath. "We'll find a way out," she promised, her voice steadier than she felt. But deep down, she knew they were not. Alone in this darkness, something stirred beneath the floor, a whispering that called to them, seductive yet filled with malice. It coiled around Lisa's mind, creeping up her spine, and in that suffocating silence, one thought clawed at her heart: what if they weren't the only ones who wanted out? Chilled air surrounded them, freezing the tension in the small room. As Lisa's eyes adapted to the dark, she squinted toward the symbols etched around her, a maze of interlocking shapes that felt alive. Each curve and angle seemed to shimmer, whispering secrets she couldn't grasp. Her heart hammered in her chest as she clutched her children tighter, aware of the cold creeping from the floor, gnawing at her feet. Emma tugged at Lisa's sleeve. "What's that noise?" A low thump echoed, shaking the ground beneath them. Silence fell again, like a pause in a horror movie, the type where you know something terrible is about to reveal itself. Max's wide eyes darted around the room, his voice a frightened whisper. "Mom, I don't like this place." She felt paralyzed but forced her legs to move, edging toward the flickering bulb. The light did little to illuminate the corners, where shadows lurked and seemed to react to their presence. What had she done, dragging them down here? Maybe there's another way out, she stammered, her mind racing through every escape story she'd read. But those were fantasies, weren't they? Stories meant to soothe restless children, not to guide an overwhelmed mother and her terrified kids trapped in a basement of dread. With every step she took deeper into the room, tremors cascaded through the floor, almost rhythmic, like a heart pounding beneath the soil. The whispers intensified, a cacophony pressing against her mind, a dark melody tempting her to listen. "Mom!" Max shouted, pointing to the wall. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsating in time with the trembling floor. It was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. "They're moving," Max said breathlessly, and Lisa squinted to focus, their shapes twisted into faces, mouths forming silent screams, hands reaching out. The air thickened, curling around them like smoke, before dissipating into a bitter chill. "We need to," her voice cut off as the basement door rattled violently above. Panic surged in Lisa, panic that wrapped around her throat like a noose, threatening to choke her resolve. What was up there? What wanted them back? Another resounding thump, then silence. She dared to glance at her children, their small, terrified faces illuminated sporadically by the flickering light. Emma was on the verge of tears, while Max's fearful grip turned her sleeve clammy. "Listen to me," Lisa said sharply, trying to assert control. "We have to stay quiet. We can't let them know we're here." Then, the air thickened with an otherworldly bitterness, and the whispers transformed into guttural growls that wrapped around them like fog. Each growl twisted into a word, a name that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Feed." "What does that mean?" Emma croaked, eyes wide. "I don't know." Lisa replied, her own heart drumming a frantic beat. The shadows inched closer, grave and patient, as if savoring their fear. Just when hope began to dim, she felt a pulse beneath her feet, a subtle vibration that lured her. "Maybe there is something here," she murmured, kneeling beside one crate. It felt oddly warm, out of place in the cold room. She pulled at the lid, revealing decaying remnants covered in ash. Was that a bone? But then, the whispers rose to a crescendo, drowning out her thoughts. "Satisfy us." The room felt tighter, squeezing her lungs with every breath. She scrambled away from the crate, her instincts screaming that they were intruding on something ancient, something that demanded tribute. With desperation rising, Lisa grabbed her children. "We have to find a way out. Now." They turned toward the wall, searching for an escape. The pulsing of the symbols grew erratic, and Lisa's eyes widened in horror as she noticed the shapes morphing into claw-like hands that began to reach for her, drawing closer. What if they're the ones who want out? Suddenly, darkness spilled from all directions, suffocating light, crushing hope. Then, a voice, low and smooth, resonated from the walls. "To leave, you must give a part of yourselves." The shadows thickened, swallowing the room whole. What would they have to sacrifice? Lisa stood frozen, a question hanging in the air between them. Would she pay the price for their escape? Lisa's mind raced, every possible sacrifice swirling in a tornado of dread. We can't. She gasped. The pit in her stomach twisted. Whatever it meant, it couldn't be good. Nothing in this cursed place was meant to be understood, let alone engaged with. Emma squeezed her hand, her grip trembling. Mom, make it stop. I want to go home. Me too. Max echoed, tears streaming down his cheeks. The darkness flickered, and horror pulsed through Lisa. The shadows crept closer, wrapping around her like creeping vines, ready to consume them all. She felt the air grow thick and electric, almost alive, buzzing with the weight of something ancient and malevolent. To leave, you must give a part of yourselves. The voice coursed through her, seductive and horrifying. The raw panic zipping through her veins buzzed like a live wire. She needed to act. Think, Lisa. What can we do? She searched the room for anything that could help, but all she could see were those damn symbols dancing, beckoning futilely. Then, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A shadow darted in the corner, as if something lurked just beyond the boundary of their flickering light. She turned, forcing herself to look closer. There was a door, half hidden by darkness, a metallic glint catching her eye. Over there. She pointed. That might be a way out. But before they could move, the voice rose from the shadows again, deeper, more urgent. You do not understand. The darkness feeds, and it will not let you go without a cost. A swell of growls echoed through the room. The walls thumped, as if in response to the dreadful command. The floor vibrated beneath them, almost in rhythm with Lisa's heart, as she felt a pull toward that glinting door. It was cold, unwelcoming, but her choice seemed limited. Mom, please. Don't go. Emma cried, dragging her feet back. Lisa knelt, looking into her daughter's frightened eyes. Stay close to me, she whispered, trying to mask her own fear. With her heart pounding, she grasped the handle. To turn it was to tempt fate. What was waiting behind it could be far worse than the darkness they faced. Are you sure? Max whispered, his small voice quaking under the heavy dread looming above. The moment felt endless, stretching and cracking under the tension. Then, she inched the door open, hinges creaking like the bones of the damned. A darkness thicker than the basement rushed at them, swallowing the feeble light whole. Suddenly, the growls morphed into desperate shrieks, piercing through their resolve. They burst from the door into a long, narrow hallway shrouded in an almost tangible gloom. Walls dripped with moss and decay, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic. Run! Lisa yelled, her instincts screaming. She shoved her children forward. They stumbled along the narrow pathway, the shadows closing in behind them, a chilling presence hot on their heels. Every step felt hunted. Lisa looked back, and the darkness followed, undulating as if forming shapes, faces frozen in torment. The figures clawed forward in a serpentine wave, their mouths gruesomely silent but filled with a hunter's hunger. Mom! The squeal of Emma's terror jolted Lisa, pulling her back toward the moment. What do they want? Why are they? Yes, the voice crooned, echoing against the damp hallway. What will you give? Your fears? Your very essence? What does that even mean? Lisa shouted, her voice tinged with desperation. Then, without warning, the floor beneath their feet began to buckle. Cracks split wide like a heavy maw, each emergence edged with a gleaming darkness that threatened to devour them whole. The pulsing grew stronger, erupting through the walls. Shadows danced and flickered like fire, reaching forward with claw-like fingers as if summoning them deeper into the abyss. Keep moving. Lisa urged, the urgency clawing at her throat, but the hallway seemed endless. The whispers teased and beckoned, tempting her to listen. Join us, become one with the void. They stumbled forward, the air thickening alarmingly, every breath a struggle. Then, shouts echoed around them, a Chorus of pain and hunger melding together into a malicious symphony. It was clear if they stopped, they would be consumed. The choice was clear, yet terrifying. And as they rounded a corner, a faint flicker of light appeared ahead. Hope flared within her, but with it came a terrible realization: what would emerge from that light might hold the key to their salvation or doom them irrevocably. What would they face when they reached that threshold? Would it free them from the whispers, or would it drag them further into the shadows? The answer loomed in the distance, and Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited them, it was ready to collect its price. As they stumbled toward the flickering light, Lisa's mind buzzed with half-formed thoughts. What lay ahead? An escape? Or something far worse? Her instincts screamed danger, but the shadows behind them were more terrifying than the light beckoning them closer. Faster! She urged, her voice strained. They darted around the corner, the light burning bright against the oppressive gloom. Max gripped Emma's hand tightly, their eyes wide with fear. Lisa could feel her heart hammering in sync with the unsettling rhythm of the growls behind them. The light pulsed as they neared it, a warm, inviting glow contrasting violently with the darkness clinging to their heels. Lisa hesitated, a thread of anxiety knotting in her stomach. What if it's a trap? She thought, but there was no choice. The darkness was relentless, hungry, and it wouldn't spare them. The flickering intensified, illuminating a massive doorway etched with ominous symbols. The door looked ancient, tarnished with rust and age, but somehow still standing, like a monument to forgotten times. "Mom, what do we do?" Emma's voice quavered, a thin veil of hope swirling with fear. "Just step through," Lisa breathed, though doubt gnawed at her. What had she led them into? They were all out of options. With trembling hands, she gripped the doorknob, feeling its chill seeping into her skin. "On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. They pushed through together, tumbling into the bright light. However, nothing prepared them for what lay beyond. Inside, they found themselves in a wide chamber, walls lined with glimmering crystals that cast kaleidoscopic colors across a floor made of obsidian. A massive visage loomed in the center, a grotesque statue of a figure with a hollow, yawning mouth frozen in a silent wail. It radiated an aura of sorrow and despair, and Lisa felt something deep within her stir, a familiar sense of dread. "What is that thing?" Max whispered, eyes wide. It's watching us." Lisa felt compelled to step closer, as if the statue were a magnet pulling her in, whispering secrets only she could hear. The place thrummed with energy, a low hum that buzzed against her skin. "Look!" Emma pointed toward a pedestal in front of the statue. It was void of anything at first glance, but as they approached, they saw a thin layer of swirling mist rise from its surface. Could this be the way out? Lisa wondered aloud, though her heart sank. She had a feeling this pedestal was intended for something, a sacrifice, perhaps. The ominous weight of the room pressed down on them, the shadows flickering behind, almost eager, as if they could sense hope and wanted to snuff it out. "What if we give it something?" Max said, eyes darting nervously. "What could we?" "Absolutely not." Lisa interrupted, fear tightening her chest. "Whatever remains here is not worth it. We'll find another way." But the voice returned, deep and sultry, echoing through the chamber. "Sacrifice is the key," it whispered, and the room seemed to pulse with agreement. "No!" Lisa shouted, but a haze began to cloud her thoughts, blinding wisdom with temptation. "Mom, it's okay," Emma assured, stepping forward despite her trembling. "We can do it. We can know." Lisa shot back, her resolve snapping like a frayed wire. "You're not," but as she turned, she saw Max's eyes glazed in understanding, locked onto the pedestal. Something was shifting in him. "Mom, maybe it's our only chance to be free." Max's voice was barely above a whisper, heavy with the weight of dread, but mixed with an allure he couldn't quite shake, and just as the shadows around them thickened, threatening to engulf them, the statue's mouth opened wider, the darkness swirling in preparation. "Come closer, come," give the echoes taunted, pulling at them. A creeping dread settled into Lisa's bones. They were running out of time. What would they offer? Would each of them have to give a piece of their soul, their very being? What if they couldn't return? The pedestal glimmered in front of them, its surface calling out, promising relief from the torment behind, while the whispering shadows swirled menacingly. As Lisa faced the impending darkness, freezing fear seized her heart. What lay at the end of that pedestal? And what price would the shadows demand next? The moment hung in the air like a tense string about to snap. Lisa could feel the pulse of the pedestal, pounding like a heartbeat, each thrum echoing the rising fear within her. A deep instinct screamed at her to escape, to turn back and flee into the darkness behind. But the pulling sensation from the pedestal was irresistible, dragging her closer and deeper into the maw of aging despair radiating from the statue. "Mom!" Emma's voice trembled, the child's innocence clashing violently with the dark promises swirling in the mist. "What are we gonna do?" "No," Lisa said, panic bubbling over. "We're not giving anything. You can't listen to it." But Max stood rooted, his gaze lost in the glitter of the mist. "Maybe it's a way out," he murmured, as if enraptured by some unseen force. Lisa's heart sank. "Max, please. Stay with us." The pedestal loomed larger as the shadows crept closer, tendrils curling at the edges of her vision. The whispers escalated, curling around her consciousness like a snake ready to strike. "Sacrifice is the key," they hissed, snaking into her mind, making her question everything. Perhaps the price was just a small part. Maybe she could control how much of them they would give. "No, Lisa, come on." Emma's pleas pierced through the chaos. But the shadows stirred, provoking a riptide of terror that pulled Lisa against her will. In a raw moment of defiance, she stepped forward, her heart revving like an engine. "What do you want?" she yelled at the towering statue. It only watched in silence, the gaping mouth still ready to swallow them whole. As if in response, pale light danced around the room, increasing in intensity. Lisa shielded her eyes, shocked by the sudden brightness. Vivid colors exploded across the obsidian floor, but they glinted sinister, like secrets waiting to be unraveled. The tranquil hues blended with a deep red, suggesting something grotesque lurking beneath the surface. Max's voice trembled, a mixture of fear and fascination etched on his face. "Look at the colors, they're beautiful." "Beautiful?" she hissed. "They're a trap. Can't you see?" She turned back to the pedestal, desperate to trace its hidden truths. But the whisper stopped her. No escape, only sacrifice. The air itself felt thick, saturated with uncertainty, as if the entire room were alive, breathing in anticipation. The shadows loomed, and the thrum behind them surged into a near-deafening roar. Each cry was a cacophony of tortured souls calling, begging to be set free. "Mom! What's happening?" Emma whimpered, backing away slightly, taking a deep breath. Lisa faced her children, desperate to instill some clarity. "We have to leave. Now." But as she turned again, the whispers crescendoed into a scream. The statue's mouth widened further, as if opening for a feast. Slivers of darkness poured forth, sliding across the floor with a slickness that betrayed their hunger. The mist spiraled and twirled, twisting around her ankles like serpents ready to drag her under. "Come give what you owe," the voices taunted, more insistent than before. Suddenly, a flash of clarity ignited in Lisa's mind. What if we don't give anything? What if we take from it instead? Before she could contemplate the consequences, something within her lashed out an instinct to survive, to protect her children. The dark mist around her flared, responding to her defiance, and the whispers screeched. The ground trembled, like a thunderous warning. Max took a step back, eyes wide, shocked by the spiraling maelstrom enveloping them. "What are you doing, Mom?" "I'm taking control," she shouted back, her voice steady despite the chaos. We'll carve our own path out of this. But what if that path led deeper into the darkness? As shadows rolled and twisted like a storm, Lisa felt her own resolve slipping, each heartbeat synchronized with the shadow's hunger. The pedestal flickered again with swirling colors, and something deep inside her pulsed in response. Was it time to fight, or was it too late to reclaim what they had lost? As the darkness thickened, suffocating and rhythmic, Lisa's mind raced. What would they have to face? What truths would they uncover if they surrendered to the shadows now closing in? And somewhere in the distance, a rumble whispered, more ominous than any before. Would the sacrifice be worth the price? A dreadful question hung in the air, a harbinger of the unknown. What lay waiting in the depths of despair just ahead? The shadows pulsed like a living thing, taunting Lisa with the promise of salvation and destruction, a sinister dance she could no longer ignore. Fear wrapped around her throat, choking her resolve, but surrendering was no longer an option. It was time to take back control. Stay close. She shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos, rallying her children beside her once more. Max and Emma glanced at each other, fear reflected in their eyes, but Lisa's determination ignited something bright within them. Together, they formed a resolute trio against the swirling unknown. Whatever happens, we face it together, she decreed, steeling herself. The shadows seemed to recoil, surprised by her unfamiliar courage, and she took a deep breath, tasting the bitter air laced with unease. "Mom, I'm scared," Emma whispered, tears shimmering in her wide eyes. "I know, sweetheart," Lisa sighed, crouching down to Emma's level. "But we're stronger than they think. Remember the stories? Whatever binds the shadows here can be broken." With that, Lisa turned to face the pedestal again, the whispered temptation lingering like a poison tainted with yearning. The statue loomed closer now, the chilling gaze calling, taunting almost, but its presence felt familiar too, as if it recognized resolve when it encountered it. "What holds you here? You want to take from us?" "No!" she yelled, her voice echoing in the chamber, charging the air with conviction. "We bring no sacrifice." A tremor rippled through the room. The shadows writhed, pulling back slightly, confused by her defiance. "You dare refuse?" The voice screeched, melding anger with surprise. Light began to flicker in response, and Lisa felt an electric pulse beneath her feet. "Yes. I dare," Lisa declared, stepping forward, forcing her children at her side. "We know your games. You want us, our fear, our despair. But we will not yield." A deep rumbling emanated from the pedestal, grotesque forms emerging like nightmares within a waking dream. Max clenched Emma's hand tightly, and Lisa wrapped her arm around their shoulders, gaze unwavering. "Mom!" Emma whimpered. "Just believe," Lisa shouted, desperation fueling her words. She now understood the pedestal wasn't just an object. It was a portal, a catalyst for drawing them in deeper. It thrummed with dark energy, every flicker amplifying a primal fear buried within them. "Think of the light," Lisa urged, recalling the stories of heroes facing the dark. "We're going to gather the remnants of our strength." As they focused on that light, the memories of happier times surged through Lisa's mind's sunlit parks, warm laughter, the feel of her children's hands in hers, all of it painting colors into the murky void. She drew strength from love, and it pulsed through the shadows and into the room. "Great shadows!" she shouted, projecting her voice with clarity. "We give no part of ourselves, but we take back what you've stolen." The growl erupted into chaos, and the shadows twisted violently, coiling as Lisa's determination flooded the room like a beacon. "Let your whispers become our strength," she shouted, rallying her family. Max and Emma echoed her words, their voices rising alongside hers, a chant that filled the chamber. "We take back what's ours. We will not be afraid." The shadows raged, dark forms whipping through the air as the colors of their memories brightened, radiating defiance. The more they shouted, the more the darkness shrank back, the statue's ominous grip loosening. Suddenly, the pedestal exploded with light, a blinding flash that pushed against the shadows, forcing them to writhe outward. "Keep going," Lisa urged, her heart racing as they pressed on, hollow silhouettes breaking apart in their defiance. The growls turned into horrified wails, shadows dissipating into mist as their chant intensified. And then, with one final surge of unity, they took a collective breath, forcing the light of their memories as a wave through the chamber. Shadows melted like ice beneath the sun, dissipating into the air as laughter and love surged forth, leaving behind silence laced with echoes of the past. The weight of the chamber lightened, revealing bright walls adorned with shimmering crystals, now reflecting joy rather than despair. The awful presence began to retreat, and the chamber expanded, blossoming into something warm and inviting. Did we win?" Max breathed, his wide eyes glowing with awe. Lisa squeezed both her children, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. "I think we did," she whispered, breathless but filled with hope. They had taken back their power. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. As they moved toward the new light ahead, Lisa felt a surge of warmth wash over her. No more fear. They would no longer be haunted by the shadows of the past. Side by side, they stepped into the warmth, into a future unbound from the dark grip of Greywood Cemetery's memories. Outside, dawn broke across the horizon, casting golden rays of sunlight over the cemetery, illuminating the shadows that lingered there, dim and retreating. Lisa embraced Max and Emma, pressing them close, knowing that whatever lay ahead would never carry the weight of the shadows they'd left behind. "Let us go home," she said softly, her voice steady with reassurance. They began to walk hand in hand, stepping beyond the threshold of darkness, heading toward the life they'd reclaimed, and as they moved forward, a sense of profound relief settled around them. They had faced the nightmares, and together, they had won. Now, with a renewed sense of purpose and the bond of love as their armor, Lisa felt ready to embrace whatever came next because they had conquered their fears, and the light would always guide them home. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow this community. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.